So DC Comics is really confusing, and I'd like to steamroll through some other stuff for you and explain this theory that I came up with quite some time ago. A lot of people claim that there's no evidence for this, but I didn't do a good enough job in my original video, so now I'm going to try to go through it and show you the actual scans of why I believe what I believe. So, it's my position that Perpetua and the entire Perpetua Multiverse was a fraudulent thing that wasn't really real, per se. It had absolutely no meaning in the larger cosmic scale of things. And why do I say that? Because at the end of Death Metal 7, it says all of the major powers of the old multiverse, the one we can't find any trace of yet, is Darkseid. So all the heroes are like, hey, after this cosmic reset where the hands came and refixed everything and put everything back together, so it was said that the only person that was missing was Darkseid. So you're telling me you can account for everybody in the multiverse, all of these weird cosmic abstracts and super beings, but not Darkseid. Where did Darkseid go? So what happened here? Let's start all the way back in post and pre-2015 era, before the Metal series even came out. So in this other series, it's about Batman and his Radion Bullet experience from Final Crisis. And in this sense, we find out that Darkseid has some plans for everybody, and he's using this thing called the Hyper Adapter. The Hyper Adapter is powered by Element X, which was a substance dropped by monitors way back in the Jack Kirby Fourth World series from the late 70s. Now, this is funny because True Form Darkseid picks it up and he puts it inside of his Hyper Adapter technology, and it's what powers all of his stuff. So, people have said that there's no evidence for Darkseid wanting to do this weird thing where he's going to make his own creation. Well, the guy loses, like, all the time. He's like the ultimate villain loser. And in order to win, he came up with this plan a long time ago. And we get a glimpse of it in the Countdown to Final Crisis series, where he's like, I'm just going to make my own reality outside of the normal space. Like, I'm going to make my own thing way over here somewhere where nobody can see me.
Fluttered against the face of the void, whispering, "Let there be light." And light was. And it was good.
Wrong! Right? That's what he says right here. And then we find out later that this is exactly what he wanted to do. So the Radion Bullet Batman story comes through, and it tells us that the Omega Adapter, Darkseid, knowledge, and that is a face of Barbados. That's a different face of Barbados, but it's supposed to be pretty much the same character that we found in the Metal series, Barbados, the Bat God, and the one written by Scott Snyder. Now, this was written by Morrison, of course, but it's telling you that the Darkseid Hyper Adapter is Barbados. It's manifesting as Barbados through the hand of Darkseid. So, it's kind of funny because what Darkseid says here is unable to interact with the fifth world in unbroken aspect of the new gods, I remain. The fifth world is my absolute experiment. All time is now. So wait a second. Do we have two scans here that tell us that Darkseid's plan was to forge his own reality, to forge his own thing, to test this theory that he has, whatever he wants to do, his magnificent plan, his absolute experiment? So yeah, we have two. And this was funny to me because the Metal series wasn't quite over yet, and there was a guidebook released in 2021 called DC the Book, where it says here, her multiverse, Perpetua, is cut off from the Omniverse, and reality is then erased and restarted. In this way, several multiverses come into being. They are both separated and connected by the bleed, the interdimensional void. So, in this entire series, from the Justice League 2018 series onward, we find out that the greater Omniverse is supposed to be the Overvoid. The Overvoid contains the Source at its center. The Source lives in the greater Omniverse. The Hands and Perpetua are from the greater Omniverse. But here, in the middle of that, slapped down in a guidebook that spoiled the end of Dark Crisis years before it actually was completed. Accidentally, of course. Now, we find out that bleed space is what reigns above that source wall. Now, mind you, this source wall is not authentic. The hands are not authentic. Perpetua is not authentic. The source is not authentic. And the chronicler is not authentic. These are all experiments made by Darkseid. But why did he do that? Why did he use this hyper adapter to try to experiment with his own reality, his own creation? Well, he's using the collective unconscious to empower himself like a battery. He's letting an entire multiverse come to fruition in a natural sense to build the power of belief in these abstract beings, to believe in Perpetua, to believe in the source, to believe in the hands, etc., and so on. And he needs to do that naturally. So all this like collective unconscious power can be absorbed later. So after the events of Death Metal 7, everybody is accounted for except Darkseid, and we don't hear from Darkseid for a long time until Incarnate, Dark Crisis #1. Suddenly, he's out in the greater omniverse where the source and the hands live. Now, mind you, these hands were really pissed off at the Darkest Night and Perpetua for doing what they did. They came down immediately and were like, we're stopping your stuff right here. But they didn't do that to Darkseid, even though Darkseid was doing a way worse thing out there than what Perpetua was trying to do. Why didn't they stop him? Why didn't the source come? Why didn't the chronicler be like, hey, what are you doing in my home? Why are you in my home trying to do all this stuff? In this event right here, this is in the greater omniverse. They tell you Elseworlds and Earth Omega are in the greater omniverse. They're supposed to be in a location above the source wall in the overvoid. Hey, wait a second. That's not the overvoid, though. How do we know? Well, for another 1.5 to 2 years, up until the end of 2023 when Dark Crisis ended, the Flash Big Bang series came out, issues 1 and 2. And in this issue, we find out that the Flash decides to go to this greater omniverse and try to map out what's going on in there. And when he goes in there, he realizes, hey, wait a second, I've been here before. I was here before. I know these worlds. Why is this happening? What's going on here? And he's running around through all these worlds, and he runs into the Anti-Monitor. And the Anti-Monitor is confused on why the Flash is still alive. But hey, wait a second, Perpetua had a son named the Anti-Monitor Mobius, and that Mobius knew all about the Flash. He fought the Flash just recently. So he was aware that this Flash was still alive. He's aware that Wally was alive. But why does this Flash, why does this Anti-Monitor not know why Wally West is still alive and Barry Allen? Why are they here? What's going on? Who are you? I thought you were dead. Well, if we run back to the old Crisis on Infinite Earth series, that Anti-Monitor, the last time he saw the Flash, he died. So this Anti-Monitor is from the Crisis on Infinite Earth series. This is the actual Anti-Monitor who never died. We thought he died, but he didn't actually. He was running around the rest of the Orrery of Worlds the entire time while somebody locked everybody in a Local 52. And that somebody is Darkseid. So Darkseid made this custom little experiment reality where he stuck all the major powers into this localized multiverse. And he wrote a story with this god named Perpetua and these fake things called hands and the source and all these other things going on there. And none of it was real. None of it was actually real. It was all just a battery source for Darkseid.
In order to change a human being into this.
Now, why do I say that, though? What would be the actual reason why I would say something like that? Well, if we listen to Morrison, the backstory was Scott's. The whole thing was his, really. We conferred, but I was mostly rah, 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 go Scott on my part. I really enjoyed writing the Detective Chimp stuff with him, but otherwise, I left it all to Scott and his relentlessly manic world-building skills. Personally, I didn't think the Hyperadapter and Barbados were worthy of any further elaboration. I decided that Cosmic Batman is a valid approach with diminishing rewards. Scott, on the other hand, saw possibilities. Oh boy. So, there you go. Barbados and the Hyperadapter are actually linked, and it was Scott's plan the entire time. Interesting, huh? So, what the heck happened here? Well, Darkseid, for ages and ages in DC Comics lore, has been trying to make his own creation that he could sift power from. So he ends up actually doing it using the Hyper Adapter, which is powered by nil monitor tech from Final Crisis, from the monitors, the flying monitors that came from Jack Kirby's series. So he makes this fake thing, this fake history, this fake little bubble inside of the Orrery of Worlds, and he lets it go. He lets all the gods come to exist and everything like that, and then it finally ends, and then Darkseid is suddenly missing from the entire equation. What was he doing? Well, he was out in that area past the fake source wall, which we called the Greater Omniverse. And he was attempting to restore his Godhead, his full power. Why did he need to do that? Suddenly he's just got his power back. That's how Incarnate 1 actually said things. And the end of Death Metal 7 again said that Darkseid was the only one not accounted for. So the next time we see him, suddenly he's super powered up. Why did that happen? Because he was feeding on that entire Perpetua verse the entire time. It wasn't the hands that reset anything. This was Darkseid doing that entire thing. He wrote it this way just so he could use it as a power source for himself. And it was all an attempt to get his full power back because he was incapable of doing so. So after that, and that is Incarnate number 1, which came out after Death Metal. The series runs all the way through the end of Dark Crisis, and at the end of it, we find out from Lex Luthor that the idea of the Greater Omniverse was a fraudulent one, being abused by Pariah. And that is the funny part. That is the crux of everything going on here, because what Darkseid did with this fake fraudulent Perpetua Multiverse, where he's using this multiverse to power himself, Pariah was doing the exact same thing, identically the same thing with the old Crisis on Infinite Earths multiverse. Now, what happened there back in the 80s during the Crisis on Infinite Earths multiverse series was that the Anti-Monitor ends up deleting and consuming infinite worlds, potentially infinite worlds, almost infinite worlds, whatever. He destroyed the multiverse. Now, we thought it was completely deleted, but we found out it was moved to another location. And in the Dark Crisis series, we find out its name is Multiverse 2. The very same Multiverse 2 from the Multiversity, which the Empty Hand said he deleted and broke and consumed. So isn't this funny that Darkseid's plan was to do all of this stuff where he invokes his own multiverse, where he's using it as a battery to empower himself through the collective unconscious of all these gods and fake things that he wrote into existence so people would believe it, and those intense powers and energies would naturally come to exist, and then he would just consume all of them to empower himself so he can get back his Godhead true form. While Darkseid is doing that, above him is Pariah doing the identically same thing with the old Crisis on Infinite Earths Multiverse 2. It's literally identical.
Doug, if I might.
And it's only fitting that the entire story revolves around Darkseid doing this thing for so long and then finding out, yep, I'm still a loser. Pariah just did the same thing to me and now I have no control. Oh, hang on, wait a second. He was able to do this with a much, much bigger multiverse than I was. I was only able to manage like 52 local, universes and put them in this little container, but Pariah, oh my god, this dude was able to tap the entire Crisis on Infinite Earths multiverse, all those worlds that the Anti-Monitor had consumed that we thought were gone actually weren't. It was just moved over there somewhere else in the Orrery. So all of this fits perfectly. This isn't even speculation. It's directly stated that this is Darkseid's entire plan to do this entire thing. This is why the hands and the source don't show up in Incarnate through Dark Crisis. This is why the Chronicler is completely missing. This is why all of that stuff in the Greater Omniverse, all those other hands and the judges of the source are missing. They're gone because Darkseid ate them. He ate them for a power source, like a battery. And that was the entire point. But it's funny because Pariah was doing the exact same thing above him and above his scope of perception with the entire Crisis on Infinite Earths multiverse. So it's funny because it all fits perfectly. And I don't know if I can even consider this theory anymore because of those scans. Like, the Darkest Night tells you that the hands were coming to delete the entire Perpetua multiverse. Did they delete it? Did they kick it into the Death Sun? Did Perpetua's entire multiverse get, reformed and revised in this certain way and unmade? Was Alpheus even born? They say that the Dark Multiverse is still rolling around below them, but is that true when it comes to the Dark Crisis era? I'm not so sure anymore. I think the evidence points to the fact that Darkseid used the hyper adapter to forge his own reality, his own multiverse, and while he was doing that, Pariah was above him the entire time, doing the exact same thing.